I settled into my usual corner at the brunch spot, the one my family always gathered at on weekends. The coffee in front of me had long gone cold, but I kept stirring it slowly, an old habit that calmed me. No one really paid attention to me, as expected. The spotlight, as always, belonged to Vivien. She was sitting across the table, legs crossed, the sunlight catching the sparkle of the diamond ring on her finger. "Your old job really was a snooze fest." She laughed loudly enough for the whole cafe to hear. I could hear her words clearly, every pause in her sentence, every bit of self-amusement. The joke had landed in her mind, but no one else laughed, just Vivien, amused by her own words. I didn't even look up at her. I just kept my lips pressed together, stirring my coffee. My mother mumbled, "Vivien, don't be like that." But Vivien just shrugged. To her, silence was failure. My father, sensing the tension, tried to steer the conversation somewhere safer. "The eggs Benedict are a bit too salty," he mentioned. But Vivien's smirk hung in the air, waiting for a response. I said nothing. I never did at family gatherings. It was easier that way. And somehow, they took my silence to mean that I had nothing worth saying. But the truth was, ever since I made the choice to stay behind the scenes, silence became my space. It was the place where I created a whole world, one they could never imagine. I remember the moment when I first realized that the greatest things in life didn't have to be flaunted. I was 27, sitting beside Sam, my best friend from college. We were typing the first lines of code for what would later become the backbone of an intelligent data analytics system used by banks, hospitals, and even government agencies. Now, at 33, I'm the co-founder of Dataloom, a tech company valued at over $80 million. But no one in my family knows. I'm not even on the official website. In interviews, Sam is the face of the company, the one who stands in front of the camera and tells our story. Me. I chose to stay behind the scenes. My name appears only on internal documents, investor agreements, and Vivien's paycheck. It's funny, though. The sister who never hesitated to mock my quietness is now applying for a position at the very company I helped build. She has no idea that the person reviewing her application is the one she's mocked for years. I watched her as she went on, talking about the now defunct accounting firm she used to work for. "But it's all good," she said, waving her hand like it was nothing. "I'm a problem solver. I'm targeting a new company, something called Dataloom. Heard they're hiring." My heart skipped a beat. For the first time during the meal, I looked up, but I quickly looked back down, careful not to let the flicker in my eyes show. She kept talking. "I already applied. If they bring me in, I'll handle their budget better than anyone there. If they pass me up, it's their loss." I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. That sentence, bold and smug, was a carbon copy of the lines she used to throw at me, telling me I'd never get anywhere hiding in the shadows. Maybe she'll never realize it, but in that very shadow, I built an empire, one she's now about to step into, completely unaware. And still, I said nothing, not out of fear, but because I knew that the truth would eventually speak for itself. I remember my 12th birthday clearly. Everyone was singing happy birthday to me when Vivien burst into the living room, holding a giant gold trophy. "Our baby just won the state dance competition," she announced. Mom beamed, wrapping her arms around Vivien while I stood beside my cake, candles flickering in front of me. But no one asked what I wished for, and I didn't even bother to blow out the candles. Vivien was always like that, bright, loud, always giving people something to clap for. Me. I quietly gathered my gifts, went to my room, opened the old laptop Dad had given me the year before, and continued working on my first data model. Even as a child, I loved things others found boring. I liked taking toys apart to see how they worked. I loved figuring out why a video game ran so smoothly. I loved the feeling of writing a block of code and watching it work flawlessly. Mom used to say, "Eleanor can sit for hours, and you won't hear a sound," Dad would joke. We've got a firework and a flashlight in this house. Guess which is which. No guessing needed. Vivien was the firework, and I was the flashlight. Steady, but overlooked. As we grew older, the gap between us only widened. Vivien studied art, made a few appearances on local TV, thanks to her dramatic performances. I studied computer science at a tech institute that no one in the family remembers the name of. When I graduated, they didn't even remember the date. They were too busy planning Vivien's fashion line launch. I didn't blame them, sometimes. I thought maybe I wasn't interesting enough, but silence slowly became the space where I found my worth. When Sam and I started Dataloom, all we had were two beat-up laptops and a dream to build a flexible analytics system that could predict user behavior in real time. Sam was the talker. He pitched to investors, did press interviews, ran meetings. I was the one backstage, writing every line of code, fixing every bug. A year later, a major bank signed a trial contract. 2 years in, our system was integrated into finance, healthcare, and risk analysis platforms. By year 3, Dataloom was valued at $83 million. I held 49% of the shares, but ask anyone, and they'd only know Sam Fletcher. As for Eleanor Green, never heard of her, and that was exactly how I wanted it. I didn't care for hollow handshakes, flashing cameras, or the whispers behind my back. I wanted to work, to build, to help people make better decisions with what I created. As for Vivien, after her own fashion startup failed due to financial mismanagement, she went back to accounting at a small firm. Then came the layoffs. Now she was pinning her hopes on a new opportunity, one she had no idea I created. But that's the thing, she was about to walk into a space where every budget, model, every analytics tool, every line of code was designed by me. And I wondered, when she sees my name, Eleanor Green, at the bottom of her paycheck or in the next budget draft, will she recognize it? Or will she still believe I'm just a faded extra in the dazzling world she chases? Part of me hoped she'd never find out. Another part of me wanted to see her face when the truth finally hit. I didn't need her admiration. I just wanted her to stop looking down on me. That night, back in my quiet apartment on the 18th floor, Seattle's sky was draped in a soft mist, like a velvet curtain closing after a grand show. I pulled out my laptop and logged into Dataloom's internal system. Thousands of lines of code and reports swam across my screen, each one familiar to me like the back of my hand. The first notification popped up from HR. Recommended candidate, Vivien Green. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the file. I had expected this moment, but seeing her name on the screen still made my heart pause for a beat. Her smiling photo was there, dressed in a beige blazer, looking as confident as always. I skimmed through her experience, her skills, the internal reviewer's note, confident demeanor, strong communicator, well-suited for the budget analyst role, recommend for next round interview. I didn't type anything. Instead, I clicked the 3 dots in the corner of the window, and a small prompt appeared, forward code to approval. I clicked approve. She got the job. No one at the company, except for Sam, knew that I was a co-founder. From day one, Sam and I agreed to use only his name in all media and public documents. I didn't want my image floating around the internet. I'd seen too many people lose their personal lives chasing fame. I didn't need praise. I needed freedom. So, within Dataloom, I was simply Eleanor, the senior technical advisor who usually worked remotely. I only came into the office once a week, after 6 p.m. The rest of the time, I led projects, approved spending, and mapped out strategies, all from behind the scenes. Sam was the one in front of cameras, shaking hands with investors, and speaking at tech conferences. He always respected my choice, never once revealing my identity to employees or the press. I used to wonder if that decision was the right one. But now, watching Vivien step into the world I built with my own hands, I was certain that staying silent was the only way to make this moment interesting. On her first day at work, one stayed home, just as I always did. But I turned on the internal camera system, something very few people knew I designed. From the low-angle view of the shared kitchen on the 9th floor, I saw her standing near the espresso machine. Her eyes were wide with surprise as she looked at the digital bulletin board displaying the company's ongoing projects. "This is the new company that hired me," she told a colleague, proudly. "Word is, the two founders are super private. No one's ever seen the other one. Might just be a legal placeholder." I chuckled softly. It wasn't the first time I'd heard someone question the existence of the second co-founder. That afternoon, Sam video called me. "She's off to a decent start," he said, sipping his coffee. "Confident, maybe a bit showy, but competent." He paused, eyeing me carefully. "Are you sure about this?" "She still has no idea who you are, Eleanor. For now, let's keep it that way," I replied. "Just don't slip. If she's good, this is a great opportunity. If she's not, the truth will come out faster." This wasn't about revenge. I didn't want her to fail, nor did I seek payback. I just wanted to know, how would Vivien behave when no one recognized her? When there was no spotlight, no audience clapping. A week passed, then two. Each time I came into the office after hours, she had already left. I kept my routine approving budgets at night, reviewing HR files in the silence of empty halls and idle elevators. Until one day, I was in the basement server room, checking the security system, when I heard the echo of high heels in the hallway. I stepped out and there she was, frozen in the doorway. "Eleanor?" she asked, startled and suspicious. I nodded calmly. She squinted. "What are you doing down here? Only senior management has access to this area." I smiled. "Well, I guess I have special access." Before she could respond, Sam stepped out of the adjacent room, holding a folder. "Hey, Eleanor, could you take a look at the new AI deployment plan? It needs your sign-off by Friday." I took the file from Sam and looked back at Vivien. Her eyes froze. There was no need for words. I could see it in her expression. The seed of doubt had been planted. Now, I'd see. Would she finally see me? Or would she still view me as the harmless shadow she always believed I was? That morning, Seattle had a light drizzle, and I was in the office early. I had just signed off on the latest quarterly report when my phone rang. It was Sam. "Eleanor, something funny just happened. I think Vivien's starting to get curious," he said, a hint of amusement in his voice. I looked up at my screen as a new email popped up from accounting. NS signature found in internal budget file. "Please confirm approving authority." My heart slowed. It was time. Nearly 2 months had passed since Vivien officially joined Dataloom as a budget analyst. In that time, she had earned favor in a few departments, thanks to her confidence and persuasive skills. I had watched from afar, quietly approving her proposals and saying nothing. But she had started noticing details. During one budget approval for marketing, Vivien stumbled upon a file signed with an e-signature clearly labeled Eleanor Green NS. Alongside, it was the co-founder's ID code. I knew she wouldn't let that go. The next morning, I overheard a snippet of conversation in the cafe downstairs. A young colleague whispered to Vivien, "Who's this NS person, anyway? Like a ghost in the system. Never seen them, but they sign off on everything big." Vivien smirked. "Probably just a legal figurehead. I don't trust names without faces." Behind a wooden partition, I tightened my grip on my coffee cup. She'd learn soon enough. 3 days later, she walked straight into accounting and requested access to the full budget record for the most recent quarter. With her clearance, she opened file after file, until she reached the one where my name appeared again and again. Not just signatures, but dates, file IDs, legal assessments. Every key piece carried my name. The same sister who believed I lived off the family's kindness was now staring at proof that I wasn't just any employee. I was the one who had approved her paycheck, the one behind the very reports she worked with every day. That afternoon, I got a system alert. Internal access request from account Vivien Green Dart Data Loom founding records. She had reached the master file. I pictured her sitting there, the soft blue light illuminating her face as she saw the founding documents for the first time. Eleanor Green and Samuel Fletcher, 50/50ths ownership. Role description: Chief Technical Architect. Miss Green. Her heart must have clenched. I knew her. When she's shocked, she doesn't scream or cause a scene. She goes silent, but her eyes blaze. And then she starts trying to prove it can't be real. That same afternoon, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. I wanted to see her reaction with my own eyes. Sure enough, when I entered the pantry, I saw Vivien standing alone, gripping the edge of the counter, staring at a printed page. I approached gently. "You okay?" I asked. She turned, eyes locking with mine, furious and confused. "Eleanor," she said, her voice tight. "You're the co-founder." I didn't answer immediately, I just nodded. "How long?" she asked. "Since the beginning," I replied calmly. "Sam and I started this company in a tiny room near Capitol Hill. Back when you thought I was unemployed." Vivien laughed, not mockingly, but bitterly, half disbelief, half self-directed irony. "So all this time, you were signing my paycheck. I worked under you." I nodded again, not out of pride. "Vivien, just doing my job. You're capable, so I approved your promotion. If you weren't, I would have done the opposite." She fell silent, her eyes dropping to the floor. I pulled a sheet of paper from my pocket, a budget plan for an upcoming initiative on tech education for underprivileged kids. "We're launching this soon. If you're interested, I think you'd be a great fit." She didn't take the paper, but her eyes changed. Something had shifted. I turned to leave, not pushing her. She'd need time, but for the first time in years, I saw in her eyes not scorn, but a silent question. How many times have I misjudged my little sister? The truth was, Vivien and I were far from perfect, but I was beginning to realize that sometimes silence was the only way to make people truly listen. I'd learned that lesson long ago. The 5-year Dataloom anniversary gala was held in a glass building by Lake Union, where chandelier light danced like ripples across the floor. I stood in the guest dressing room, staring into the mirror. My long black dress was minimalist but elegant, fitting snugly against a frame worn from years of all-nighters. My hair was pinned neatly, my lips brushed with a soft pink. I didn't want to stand out, but it wasn't about what I wanted anymore. Sam knocked and peeked in. "Ready, Eleanor." I swallowed hard. Not really. But I guess no one's ever truly ready to step out of the dark. He laughed. "You're not stepping out. You're stepping up." We walked onto the stage from the wings as the lights dimmed. The MC had just finished their introduction. "And now, please welcome the 2 co-founders of Dataloom, Samuel Fletcher and Eleanor Green." Applause erupted, loud, clear, and electric. Every eye turned toward me as I stepped into the light for the first time, officially and without a mask. I smiled quietly, but with purpose. Then I saw her. Vivien stood at the back of the room, one hand clutching a champagne glass she hadn't touched. Her face was stunned, like her world had flipped upside down. I knew that feeling. I'd lived it myself on the day we landed our first $1 million investment. That moment when something no one thought was real becomes undeniable. Sam spoke first, sharing our journey from his mom's garage to Dataloom's current headquarters. He talked about server crashes at 2 a.m. deadlines that left us passed out on keyboards, and how we made it through the hard times. When he passed the mic to me, the room fell silent. I took a deep breath. "Hi everyone, I'm Eleanor Green, and I guess for many of you, this is the first time you've actually seen me." A gentle wave of laughter rolled through the crowd. It wasn't mocking, it was warm surprise. "I'm not great at public speaking, and I never imagined I'd be up here," I continued. "But 5 years ago, Sam and I had two things: an idea and a belief that technology could be built on trust. I glanced down at the audience. Vivien was still standing there, no longer holding her drink. Her eyes were fixed on me, trying to make sense of a stranger wearing the face of someone she once knew. I know I'm not the public face of this company, I went on, and that was entirely my choice. But today, I felt I owed you my presence. Not for fame, but out of gratitude. Applause rose again. I nodded in thanks, and then stepped back to let the MC close the ceremony. As the lights shifted to dinner, I made my way toward the buffet, looking for a quiet corner. But with every step, someone stopped me to chat. "We thought you were a legend." One software engineer laughed. "Didn't think you actually existed." I smiled and made a few polite replies, but my mind kept drifting back to Vivien. I glanced toward the pillar where she had been standing. She was gone. I didn't know when she'd left or how much of my speech she had heard, but I felt something, an empty space quietly opening inside me, where there should have been a warm look from someone close. That night, back in my apartment, I kicked off my shoes and sank into the sofa. My phone lit up with dozens of congratulatory messages from colleagues, partners, even my parents. "We're so proud of you, sweetheart." Words can't describe it, but there was nothing from Vivien. I replayed the live stream of the event on the company website, skipped ahead to my speech, and then hit pause. I didn't need to watch it again. I just wanted to know one thing in that moment. Under the spotlight, what did Vivien see? A stranger, or the little sister she once believed would never amount to anything? 2 days after the gala, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. Not for a meeting, not to sign off on documents, but to finish something personal. I opened the drawer in the 10th floor conference room and pulled out a small walnut box I'd kept since college. Inside, I placed a navy linen covered notebook, a black ink pen, and a handwritten card. It took me over an hour to write just a few lines. Not fancy, not poetic, just honest. "Vivien, thank you for your efforts at Dataloom. You're truly capable, and I believe you'll go far. I'm proud to work with you, even if we began in silence." Eleanor folded the card, tucked it inside the notebook, and handed it to the internal delivery assistant with a quiet instruction. "Please, give this to Vivien Green." No sender name. I wasn't expecting a reply. The gift wasn't an olive branch. It was just an open door, quiet, without pressure, so she could walk through if she chose to. The rest of the week passed with no message, no email, no thank you. But I noticed a few things. Vivien no longer sat back with crossed arms during meetings. She started taking detailed notes, asking sharp questions, and giving focused input. One afternoon, I stood outside the hallway, listening as she presented a revised budget strategy for an AI project that had gone over cost. Her voice was calm, clear. Her eyes no longer carried competitiveness, but something rarer: focus. I didn't walk in. I just stood there, hands in my pockets, and nodded silently. The following week, HR announced that Vivien had proposed a new internal sponsorship initiative for junior employees, especially female interns in tech roles. She recommended allocating a portion of the CSR budget to host a series of free career workshops led by department heads. I read the proposal 3 times. Slowly. The initiative was called Touch the Screen, Touch the Future, and written below it in italics, inspired by the quiet mission of Eleanor Green. I set the file down on the table, pressing my lips together gently. That afternoon, I stopped by the pantry as usual. Vivien was there, pouring hot water into a tea carafe. When she turned and saw me, we both froze for a second, but this time, her gaze was softer, no tension, no defensiveness. I was about to pass when she suddenly spoke. "The pen is beautiful," she said, "and the notebook. I've written a few pages." I turned to her. "I'm glad you liked it." She gave a small nod. I don't think I ever really understood you. Or maybe I just never tried. I smiled without answering. There is something I want to say, she continued, her voice lower. You didn't have to give me a chance, but you did, and you never brought any of it up. You didn't diminish me to prove a point. That says more about you than anything else ever could. For the first time, I no longer saw Vivien as the teenager basking in the spotlight with a trophy in hand. I saw a woman learning to let go of pride and truly see others. I don't know if I can make it right, she said slowly, but I'll try. I nodded, feeling a weight lift from my chest. We don't need to tally up the past, I said. We just start from today. We stood side by side for a moment longer. No explanation needed. No apology required. Just a quiet understanding. This time, things would be different. And somehow, they were. Vivien stopped being the loudest person in the room. She learned to listen, gave space to younger voices, and didn't shy away from tasks she once thought beneath her. And I stopped hiding behind my screen. I began speaking at technical briefings, no longer dodging the camera. I stood before visiting students and shared my journey. Not to boast, but to show them that you don't have to be the loudest to make something big. One weekend afternoon, as I was leaving the office, I saw Vivien standing before the recognition wall, the list of top contributors for the quarter. Her name was at the top. She looked at me and gave a small nod. Thank you for not giving up on me. I smiled. We're just getting started. Vivien. On Sunday, the whole family gathered at our usual brunch spot on the corner of Green Lake. Everything was just as it had always been. Dark wood chairs, sunlight filtering through striped curtains, and the smell of warm waffles filling the room. But there was something in the air now, a shift I couldn't ignore. I sat at the long table on the balcony, joined by my parents, Uncle Henry, Aunt Laura, and Vivien. She arrived 5 minutes late, but instead of wearing her usual flashy outfit or sparkling heels, she had on a simple white blouse, dark jeans, her hair neatly tied back, and no makeup. As she approached me, her eyes hesitated for a moment, but then she gave me a small nod. I nodded back. No words were needed, just a look. That was enough. Mom was telling a story about her new flower bed when Uncle Henry suddenly chuckled and turned to me. So, Eleanor, are you still doing that little freelance thing from home? Or just typing up random computer codes all day? I smiled, not surprised. He still thought programming was just a souped-up video game. I didn't even have time to answer before a voice rang out clearly. Uncle, Vivien said, setting down her coffee and looking straight ahead. Eleanor is the smartest person I've ever known, and without her, I definitely wouldn't be where I am today. All eyes turned to her. I tilted my head slightly, but Vivien didn't shrink back like she usually did when put in the spotlight. She stood firm, gaze steady, voice unwavering. I used to think I knew everything, she continued, but Eleanor taught me something more important than knowledge. Humility. Her quietness doesn't mean she has nothing to say. It means she chooses to act instead of show off. Uncle Henry looked stunned. Aunt Laura gave a subtle nod. My mother reached over and gently squeezed my hand. I didn't say anything. I just looked at Vivien, and in that look, I saw everything words couldn't express: an unspoken apology, unvoiced gratitude, and respect earned, not by blood, but by truth. A moment later, the conversation shifted back to the weather and the upcoming holidays, but I knew something important had just happened. After the meal, as people began to leave the table, I stood up to grab my bag. Vivien stepped over, jacket in hand. She didn't say a word, but as she passed by, she whispered softly, "You don't have to forgive me, but I'll never be the same person again." I turned to her, and for the first time in a very long while, I gave her a genuine smile. "I know," I said, "and I never needed you to apologize." We walked out of the brunch spot in silence, but there was no longer any tension between us. What had happened wasn't forgotten, but it no longer lived in me like a wound. That afternoon, I went home, Made myself a cup of tea, opened my laptop, and stared out the window toward Lake Union. Just as I took a sip of the warm tea, a message from Sam popped up. Heard brunch wasn't half bad today. I replied, not bad. Let's call it a new beginning. And maybe, I added, sometimes forgiveness doesn't come through words. It comes when people finally see each other, not through judgment, but through honest understanding. Vivien and I will never be picture-perfect sisters. But now we're no longer standing on opposite sides. We're two grown women who've learned from their own mistakes. And to me, that's a beautiful enough ending to one chapter and a gentle start to the next. The story between Vivien and me taught me that sometimes understanding doesn't come from grand apologies, but from quiet, genuine change. It took me years to accept that being seen isn't the only measure of worth. But when truth is finally acknowledged, no rebuttal is needed. Silence is enough to make people reflect. Real life doesn't ask for perfection. It only asks for the courage to grow and the grace to begin again. And so, as I look back at everything that's happened, I realize it's not the big moments or loud declarations that have changed things. It's the quiet, steady growth the way Vivien and I, in our own time and in our own way, came to understand each other. We may never be the same, but that's okay. We found something better respect and an unspoken understanding that no one can take away. The road ahead will be different. We'll keep growing, keep learning, and who knows where it will take us. But this time, I don't need the spotlight. I don't need the recognition. I just need the quiet truth that sometimes the biggest changes happen when no one's watching. And maybe that's how the best stories are told.